But again, if you don't know, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have seen this this demo before, this presentation before, I apologize. I'm going to really shrink it down to hopefully 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to show you a Power App and a Power BI report that we've actually put together that helps with Center of Excellence. So a little bit about Collectiv. Like I said, we're headquartered in Chicago. We focus on everything analytics, planning. So if you're interested in FP&A, visioning, training, consulting, that's what we do. And then this is something I always use the same material over and over again. So again, if you've seen it already, I apologize, but I think we can all agree that this is your life with Power BI and this is your life without it. So this is what I used to look like. And then someone introduced me to the Power Platform and I was like, wow, game changer. Set me back a few years. So hopefully everyone's laughing on that one. Okay, so let's talk about so a little bit about Center of Excellence. So we've all heard about Power BI adoption, and this actual slide comes from the Power BI adoption methodology that Microsoft has put out there. And the one thing I'm going to talk to you about today is this box right here, Center of Excellence. So once you've actually already got a vision in place and have actually already started producing Power BI projects within your organization, you need to start coming up with ways to basically govern those things. How are you actually going to maintain your policies and your processes inside of your organization? And the one way that we recommend that you do that is by creating something called a Center of Excellence, or a COE. You can really call it whatever you want. Some people we've worked with have called it chain of command, Center of Champions. Really doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you have some type of program inside of your organization that can manage your Power BI reports, like I said, your data, all your different processes and policies. Today, I'm going to talk with you about what the Center of Excellence needs in order for it to be successful, and really the main items that you need. One is an executive sponsor. So, and that's really to be said about anything. If you're deploying Power BI in your organization, we kind of feel like you actually need to have that individual from the top, that's saying, yes, this is our Power BI vision. This is where we're at. This is where we need to be. This is how we want to get there. Because without that vision, without that executive sponsor's ownership, what can often happen is you can start deploying Power BI throughout the organization, but then if your end users aren't adopting it or not actually using it how it should be, there's really no one else to point, kind of get them back in line and say, no, this is how we actually need to be utilizing that product. After that executive sponsor actually comes the people who are going to execute that vision, your organization's vision. That's what we call your champions, or your Power BI, your Center of Excellence champions. Those are the ones that are actually going to be implementing these policies, making sure that you're following everything how it should be, implementing data governance, et cetera, all the way down the line. Right here in the middle, the core of the COE, where actually, where a lot of the work is done, that's where you actually got to take those processes, the governance policies, role level security, administration inside of Power BI, all those different items, that's what's going to live inside of that COE documentation. So you're actually going to put pen to paper and actually type these things out and store them, continuously update them. Things like a measure catalog, a report catalog, which is what I'm going to kind of demo to you as soon as I'm done going through some of these slides. And then the other thing the COE is in charge of that we feel is continuous learning. So, once you start, implementing Power BI, in order for that adoption to take place and to continuously be in play, you want to start putting in place things like, Power BI adoption trainings, maybe advanced DAX trainings for your end users that are actually going to be building your reports, maybe monthly lunch and learns, talking about Power BI updates. So as many of you know, they're actually utilizing Power BI quite often. The nice thing about Power BI is that it updates every month, and the bad thing about Power BI is that it updates every month. So keeping your end users informed about those, updates that are coming out continuously, and having a way to do that, is another key piece. And then constant engagement, continuous learning and constant engagement kind of go hand in hand together. And that's just basically making sure everyone's always informed, they're aware of what's going on, whether, like I said, that's through our lunch and learn, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, etc. Really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how often you do it, as long as you're doing something, you got a process in place, and that is something that you're continuously doing. I mentioned process a lot. I'm an engineer by background, so it's really something near and dear to my heart. So I apologize if it's something I just keep hammering on. At the end of the day, we're trying to develop that culture of analytics. So by putting all of these things in place, that culture of analytics is something that we can really strive to achieve. So we talked about having an executive sponsor and champions. Again, I've already mentioned kind of some of these things, but who's going to own your vision, who's going to execute it, who's responsible for getting things done, those champions, and then really defining those teams. So if you're a small organization, you might have one team. If you're a larger organization with multiple, departments, business units, what have you, those may have their own individual teams that feed up to your other center of excellence. So having these different teams and different ways that you can tackle your Power BI report, but all doing it with the same vision and the same concepts in place is really key to making sure that you are successful. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to not have the wild west of reports going on out there. So many times we go into an organization and we see there's reports everywhere. No one knows what the center of truth is. By having this COE in place, it's going to prevent you from having that disorganization inside of your company. It's going to prevent that wild west of reporting to go on and really kind of keep things in line with where it needs to be. Again, we talked about constant engagement and continuous learning, different concepts there, monthly learn, strategic training, whether that's, Power BI fundamentals, modeling, DAX, Power Query, admin training. Admin training is another big thing. Power BI is getting so much more complex and so many other ways you can actually utilize the tool. You need to have ways that, an actual IT admin can get in there and utilize it. Talking about governance policies, documentation, defining who can see what data. Are you utilizing certified data sets throughout your organizations? What is the process for utilizing certified data sets? Or do you have some type of mechanism, like potentially like a Power App that is utilized for change request logs? One example that I always use is, I may have a financial certified data set. If someone on my team says, hey, I want to add the measure total gross profit last year to the financial certified data set. What we recommend is that request should be submitted to the Center of Excellence, and then that COE team should meet once a week to review all these requests. You review the request and says, hey, John says that we need to add total gross profit last year. So then the COE decides, okay, sounds great. We're going to add that. The request gets sent back to John, says we're adding your total gross profit last year to the certified data set. It gets published up to the model. Now John or anyone else now can utilize that that measure throughout their reports when they're building their their Power BI reports throughout the organization. Say a couple weeks go by, show you an example of how it can actually get denied now. A couple weeks go by, John says, hey, I want to add total gross profit for bikes that are red and are always sold in the month of February. So he submits that. The COE, looks at the request through whatever mechanism that is used to collect that request. And they say, what, that's a pretty whacked out request. I don't think that's something we need to have. They go back to John and say, sorry, man, go ahead and build this in your own Power BI report, but we're not going to add that to the single version of the truth. So hopefully that paints a picture of way that you can govern your process in a way to kind of keep things in line so that everyone's always reporting off the same sheet of music. So again, just reiterate what we're talking about. So I'm going to wrap things up now with just going over a couple things that, we've actually built for some end users. This is just all using dummy data, but we've actually put together a reporting catalog, and the next piece to this is actually to build out a measure dictionary. So let me show you exactly what this looks like. Bring over my other screen. So we've built this Power App, and this Power App is just using a SharePoint list. And in the background, what it is if I have all these different reports, we've seen a lot of clients that were keeping track of their reports and everything they had inside of Excel spreadsheets. So what we thought is, well, maybe we can create some type of a Power App that allows these end users to, stay out of that, that data source and just collect this information by using a simple Power App. And the way that works is if I click on Add Report, what they can do is they can put in simple information about that report. They can put the report name, its purpose, who it was created by, the workspace it lives in. Now, some of this stuff you can actually extract from a Power BI API, but we thought this was at least one simple approach that they could utilize to collect some basic information. Oops, sorry, there we go. To collect some basic information about their report. Then they can actually add the data sources that fuel that report, you know, if that's a SQL database, the type it is, the location, if it's using a data gateway, etc. So they fill all this information out once it's done. Once that data gets filled out inside of here, then it populates. Go back. It fills out this screen, and this is just a screen full of the reports. So if I wanted to see more info, maybe about my CRM pipeline, it's going to show me all that information about my CRM pipeline report, who the owner is, what the audience side is, what the refresh schedule is. And then inside here, you can actually put your report URL. And the idea of that report URL is that if I wanted to open that report directly from here, it would bring me to a Power BI. This is just linked to a Google site, but the idea is it would pull up your Power BI report. Then what we've done is we've actually created a Power BI report for our Power BI report. So this Power BI report here is actually pulling from the data that this Power App has collected. And now you can actually see information about how many reports we have in play, how many data sources are total, you know, who the owners are, all these different ways that we can slice and dice our information. If we go to a data source analysis, we can actually look at our data source decomposition through a lineage view. Again, it's just a way to keep things organized so you can see what's going on. And, you know, basically the next step to this report catalog is implementing a measure dictionary so that you can actually see the measures that are a part of these reports or your tabular models. So hopefully you guys have found that a little insightful. I know I went through it pretty quickly. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how you can start implementing a center of excellence inside your own organization, or utilizing, you know, these concepts and, you know, keep that Wild West, keep it from becoming a Wild West of reports inside of your company. But that's it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. That's all I have for today.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
No, thanks for being here. I think that demo was excellent. I think it's really exciting to see how, you know, exactly how companies are rolling this out and how people are tracking it in different ways that we can use other aspects of the Power Platform to do it all. So I really appreciated that. Does anybody have comments? Is anybody doing anything similar in your own organization?
I do have a question for Greg, though. This is Tammy. I just want to make sure what you showed us, was that just only driven by Power Apps, or did you use like Microsoft Excel to put in the data, and then you also use a combination of Power Apps and Power BI?
Yeah, so everything that we put into this app, and I'll reshare my screen. One more second.
Okay.
So everything that this report is built off of has come from this Power App. So whenever we add a report in here, all this data is being written to a SharePoint list, or you could think of it as an Excel spreadsheet. So none of the information was entered into Excel. You could if you wanted to, but the idea was to keep someone out of that data source. We don't want them actually touching where this data is being stored at. And that's the whole idea of the Power App. So they can come in here and then they can, you know, update all the information that they need. And then once that data is in there and has been written to that SharePoint list where the data is being stored, then that gets pulled into this Power BI report, you know, just like it's pulling from a regular database, and then it updates that information.
Now, how did you get the other page that you showed us where it shows open and, yeah, it showed open?
Let's see here. This here?
No, it was where it showed all of the, yes. How did you get that how did you do that, if you don't mind me asking? It looks nice. I really like it. How did you,
so this is just another Power App view. And I'm gonna have to say I didn't create this. Another individual on our team created this. But basically what this is these are just buttons that have links behind them. And this button here is pulling from this basically pulling from the report URL. So it's something that is being stored inside of the database that's associated with that report, with the health and safety report. So the idea is when you click on that, that's going to bring you to your report URL. So I think I use this example here. Of course, it's not working for me, but more info brings you to this one. It's just a layout that the Power Apps developer put in play. So sorry, I can't be much more help, but I do know what's going on behind the scenes here. Is they're actually just referencing the data that has been entered into this app.
It's a gallery control in Canvas app.
Oh, gallery control. Okay.
I'm not the developer, but I know Power
But
Apps.
you're a developer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks so much. And just real quick, if everybody wants to unmute themselves, it's Greg's birthday today. So I was thinking at the very least, if we could just tell him happy birthday. We don't have to sing or anything, but maybe just a happy birthday on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday!
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Shannon.
Of course. Thanks so much for being here. All right, so now we are going to jump into the next piece of the presentation, which I'm super excited about. Keelan is going to talk to us about data storytelling and creating real insights in Power BI. And this is something that I think, very often in this user group, we have a lot of technical talks about what can the product do, and it's a lot of information about the product itself. And we really miss a lot of the people aspect and thinking about the real impact of what's happening with this data. So I'm super excited to hear from you, Keelan. I've heard really, really great things about you as a presenter, so I'm excited to hear from you. So go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me just make sure. Can folks see my deck here? It says data storytelling for Power BI. Did I?
Yep.
Get that? Yep. All right. Perfect. All right. So thank you guys so much for having me and my colleague today. I should add that you guys have a little bit of a Chicago theme going here. So Narrative Science is headquartered in Chicago. That's where I am, as well as my colleague. And also, I do have a connection to DC. I actually lived in DC from 2006 to 10. So it's been a little while, but a little bit of a local connection there. All right, so just by way of introduction, my name's Keelan McDonald. I'm the general manager at Narrative Science and our BI and analytics product. So I oversee all of our product and go-to-market efforts on our natural language generation products that are embedded in BI platforms. And I'm joined today by my colleague Manon, who is a product specialist on my team. And he's going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of how our data storytelling product works after I get through the slides here. So that will definitely be the more exciting part of the presentation. So stay tuned for that. So as we talked about a minute ago, really the theme of today's presentation, creating a culture of insight, creating a culture around data storytelling is really in the DNA of narrative science. It's what our products do, and it's what we sort of fundamentally believe about data and BI. And our mission as a company is to empower everyone to understand data and make decisions from that data. And we believe that the best way to understand data, the best way to drive those important business outcomes is through data storytelling. And we'll talk a little bit about, there's lots of definitions. I'm sure you've heard this phrase before. But really fundamentally, the reason that we believe data storytelling is so important is because we believe that it broadens the understanding of data and brings it to an audience that may not necessarily think of themselves as data people or data analysts. But that doesn't mean that they can't get tremendous value from data and tons of insight and lots of sort of important kind of business outcomes are going to come from that understanding. All right. So we unfortunately did not actually invent data storytelling, although we're practitioners of the art of data storytelling. It's been around for a little while, and it's been highlighted a lot in the analyst community. And this is a recent report from Gartner about 9 months ago. They mentioned that by 2025, they expect data stories will be the most widespread way of consuming analytics. And 75% of those data stories will be automatically generated using augmented analytics techniques. So that's a pretty crazy statistic. That's 4.5 years away. And they're assuming that this is going to be the most widespread interface for data in the enterprise. And I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with data storytelling, maybe have even started doing some data storytelling and started kind of experimenting with augmented analytics. But to go from kind of the bleeding edge community that is adopting these technologies very early on to expecting completely widespread adoption in just a few years is pretty tremendous. And it speaks a lot to how important, Gartner and other kind of analysts and commenters see language being as an interface for data. So, when we think about kind of the traditional interfaces for data, it's not that they're going away necessarily. There'll always be a community that wants to interface with data through those mechanisms. But it's really just about delivering data in a language and a format that everyone can understand. All right, so what do we mean by data storytelling? So like I said, unfortunately, we did not invent this, but we've been doing it for almost a decade now. And for us, we've really kind of crafted a very specific definition around data storytelling. So there's a couple kind of key capstones that we look for in data storytelling. One is that there's no configuration. And what that means is that there's not necessarily that there isn't an option to configure a data story or edit it or customize it, but that the user should be able to get from having data to having a data story with virtually no effort, almost completely automated. And so basically, when you think about that, it's basically going from nothing to a first draft in a second or two. And that's kind of the magic of the experience. Just like when you ask Alexa or Siri or Cortana or any of these kind of voice assistants for information and you get a response right away. This is just another language interface. It's a language interface for business data. It should meet you where you work. So I know we're all working from home these days, but if you guys all might recall a few months ago when we were doing things like getting on buses and trains and planes and checking work email while grocery shopping or picking up kids from daycare. A lot of work is done on mobile devices and away from laptops. And so we really want to, create data stories that are in a format that acknowledges that reality, that people are not always looking at a full screen and that information needs to be kind of communicated in little digestible bites that people can really understand and take action on. Third, plain English. So this is kind of the heart of data storytelling, via language, but data stories should be super easy to understand. So you should not need any particular special skill set in order for anyone on your team to understand a data story. So, when you think about, especially the size of big enterprise workforces, you've got, certainly large teams that are very technical and are going to be able to, dig into a spreadsheet or write scripts or look at really complicated visualizations and just know what to do. But there's also a lot of operational workers. There's a lot of executives who maybe don't have that skill set, don't have the time to engage with that type of information. And so data storytelling really is a format that they can kind of engage with that same information and get value out of it. Interactive experience. This is, I think, how and where data storytelling and BI collide and kind of coalesce, which is, one thing that people love about dashboards, among others, is the interactivity, right? So you can, filter a dashboard, you can dig into information, you can look for different views of your data, and that's really what BI. That's kind of the power that BI has brought to data. Language should work the same way. You shouldn't just be a data story should never just be a static report, right? That sort of defeats the purpose. You should be able to take that data take that data story, filter it, pivot it, look at your information in lots of different ways while still getting it in that really clear, concise, brief kind of summary format. And then finally, personalization. Everybody loves things that are personalized. We want to know that things are built for us and are catering to our needs. But with data stories, it's really important and actually I think quite easy. You know, when you think about you know, all the different kind of constituents that are trying to consume data, consume information via dashboard, you know, they have lots of different needs, right? So an analyst or somebody who's more technical might want a ton of detail. They might want lots of really hardcore analytics and lots of you know, kind of meaty data that they can really, you know, sink their teeth into and make comparisons. You might have somebody in a more operational role or a more senior role where they just want a summary. They want something super quick. They want something really short. Maybe they want it refreshed and kind of updated when the data comes in, but they want it in a format that is kind of appropriate for their role. And so data stories, I think, really kind of makes that very easy. And when Manon gets into his demo, I think you'll really see what I mean there, in the sense that it's basically a flip of a switch to kind of convert a narrative for different audiences and different sort of, I guess, verbosity tolerance levels. So the way that we as a company solve for data storytelling and solve for kind of creating that last mile of insight in Power BI is with our product flow. And just really simply, it adds stories to your dashboard and makes them easily understandable for a broader audience. So when you think about that, when you think about adoption of these tools, and when you think about sort of the goals that a lot of you know, centers of excellence and BI admins have for these tools, everyone's goal is for as many people as possible to log in, to engage with dashboards, to engage with information, because you know, a world in which builders and data science teams are spending a ton of time building these things, but nobody is logging in is not good for anyone. It's not good for the audiences that need that information. It's not good for the builders who want to share their expertise and really federate and evangelize that out to their organization. And so data stories are a way to kind of translate that technical expertise from these teams within the enterprise out to, again, just a broader audience that wants to consume information maybe in a slightly different format. So I want to talk a little bit about specifically how kind of Power BI builders measure the value of data storytelling. There's a couple metrics that we work with our customers and partners on, and we really have them kind of focus in these areas when they're looking at data stories. And the first one is saving time explaining and interpreting data. So if you're a builder of dashboards or an admin of these systems, you know that you probably get a lot of questions from folks that are logging in and looking at these dashboards, and they have a question about something they're seeing in a graph or something that they're looking for in the data or not finding. And you know, you would be amazed at how much time those one-off questions really absorb from data science and analytics teams. And these are folks that are, you know, highly trained to be doing you know, really high-level analytics tasks, and instead often their attention is pulled into answering like fairly mundane questions that could be explained pretty quickly through one of these automated narratives. So freeing those folks up, freeing those data experts up to be data experts and not to have to translate out, you know, the information in their dashboards to other teams in their organizations. The second one, as I mentioned a minute ago, is improving BI adoption. So again, this does go along with the theme of the COE, which is a great one, and we actually talk a lot with our customers and partners about setting up COEs. They're really important. Which is just that a lot of organizations, you know, have a BI platform, you know, they start kind of their journey with Power BI, and you know, they don't necessarily have a kind of a philosophy or strategy around making sure that people are actually logging in, that they're getting access to the right dashboards at the right cadence, and that they have a kind of good feedback loop for figuring out how do I get the information I need in a format that I can understand. And how does the delivery team on the analytics and data science side actually deliver that? So, with narratives, with data storytelling, it's just a really nice automated way to kind of scale that gap. So, you know, the communication gets automated. It can go into any of your Power BI dashboards. It's completely agnostic as to your use case or what the dashboard is about. But it answers all the same types of questions that kind of occur between the builders and the consumers of dashboards. And the last one is improving productivity and insight, which I think is kind of a shared goal with Power BI itself or any of these types of tools, which is that really, businesses don't collect data for the fun of it. They want to make sure that their frontline workers are getting access to that data. And long ago, as an industry, everyone decided, 20, 30 years ago that just giving people raw data was not going to quite cut it. And so BI emerged, and it's come a long way in terms of helping people to interact and understand data. And now we're sort of in this next phase, which is sort of the data storytelling phase, and helping people to really, really go from I understand what the numbers are to I actually can extract insights from those numbers and make kind of critical business decisions instead of just kind of retroactively looking at the numbers and sort of knowing what they are, actually know what they need, which is a really important piece. And then just kind of as a couple examples here, I'm actually going to talk about one of our partners here, Rockwell Automation. They are a very large user of Power BI. One of their Power BI folks who runs their Center of Excellence, Chris Wagner, is a big influencer in the community and is a Microsoft MVP. You've probably come across him. And he's been an awesome partner for us. So he brought in our product because he was a strong believer in data storytelling and kind of observed that gap, which was that they were having success with Power BI, but there was just a little bit of information that just still wasn't kind of landing with the kind of business audience that was consuming the dashboards. And so he was really a huge advocate of adopting data storytelling as sort of a technology, but also just a mindset and kind of a cultural thing within Rockwell. And so they've been working with this technology for a little under a year now, but they've already had one of their dashboards that includes data stories nominated and won a Future Edge 50 award. And they have a number of different use cases deployed in product quality, sales, finance, data science. So when you see Manon's demo in a minute, you'll see how really scalable this is across different domains and use cases. It's not one of those things where you sort of spend a lot of time kind of hard coding it to a very specific use case or domain. It's really something that you can apply to any area of your business that uses Power BI. All right, with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Manon for the exciting part of this. Manon, are you able to grab my screen?
It gets more exciting. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Manon, I'm sorry that I didn't introduce you in the beginning. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. No problem. I just went ahead and shared my screen. Can someone just confirm that you're able to see a bar chart on my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Manon. I'm a product specialist at Narrative Science. And today I'm going to walk you through just a high-level demonstration of how Quill works within Power BI. So as Keelan has already introduced, at a really high level, Quill is designed to instantly generate dynamic and easy to read narratives that explain what's going on in your data. Of course, the consumers of these dashboards are not always data scientists or technical analysts, but it is important for everybody that is consuming this information to really understand the data that's most relevant for their business function, regardless of their role or level of data literacy. Quill is designed to do exactly that, and it is a completely out-of-the-box tool in the sense that there's no back-end coding or configuration or template building required in order to start using the tool. You can simply drag and drop the extension onto your dashboard, point it to a data set, and within a matter of seconds have a story generated describing that data. And then, of course, from there are a number of ways to further enhance and customize that output. So as far as what you see on my screen here, this is just a sample visualization, sample dashboard in Power BI. So I have a pretty basic bar chart that is showing revenue data across a 12-month time series, and also broken down by divisions, which you can see in the different colors. And visually, this is appealing. There's a few things that you can probably gather just by looking at this chart. For one, it's pretty clear that revenues increased quite a bit from July to August, and then continue to rise through November, dropping a bit in December. Beyond that, you can also probably assume that the core division here is probably your largest across the time series. But beyond these obvious things that we can all see on the chart, understanding this data in terms of what trends may be occurring over periods of time, or peaks, valleys, or outliers within the data, or how your dimension values may be correlated to one another. Those are the kinds of insights that are a bit harder to grasp just by looking at a chart or a graph. And really, that's the knowledge gap that Quill aims to bridge by generating dynamic content. So using the tool is really quite simple. I'm just going to go in to edit my dashboard here. And in order to start creating stories, I basically have two options. I can either transform an existing visualization into a story, or I can simply add the extension to open space on my dashboard and select the data points I want to use to create that story. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and recreate this a duplicate of this visualization, and I'll pull this over to the right-hand side. And to turn this into a story now, all I have to do is select the visualization that I want to use and click on this Narratives for Power BI custom visualization icon. So as soon as I click on that icon, you'll notice that the visualization has now transformed into our extension. And I'm presented with really just one high-level question that is going to help the tool understand how to talk about the data that I've selected. So, of course, the data points that I'm using here will be months and divisions as my two dimensions, and then revenue as my single measure value, which all came from the visualization that I transformed. And the question here is just asking me how I would describe that data. So these are essentially different story types within Quill. This is fundamental to the type of analysis the tool is going to generate. In the example that I'm showing you here, because we do have a time series element in our data, we have this 12-month time series, we're going to write a continuous story. The continuous story type is primarily focused on trend analysis over time. But if we were to write about a visualization that did not have a time series element, perhaps we're just looking at revenues distributed across our three divisions. In that scenario, we'd likely write a discrete story, which is going to be more focused on how your measure is distributed across your dimensions. But again, in this case, we'll go with continuous, and I'm just going to click Write Narrative. And really, just like that, in a matter of seconds, we now have a story that is describing our data set on the left-hand side. So there's no back-end setup that I did prior to the steps I just showed. I simply added the extension, pointed it to data, and within seconds we have a story. And that really makes this tool highly scalable in the sense that it's something that just about anybody can use, and because it's so easy to use, there's not a lot of technical debt that you're going to create each time you create a new instance of the story. So using it across tens or hundreds of different dashboards is quite easy. In terms of the content that you see here, the top section is going to show you an overview of the full data set that we are looking at. So we're calling out a number of insights and trends here at the top when looking at revenue across all periods and all divisions. So just for example, the second bullet says the 235.2 million in revenue across the entities was driven by core, with 134 million growth, with 55 million in minor, with 45.5 million. So calling out, what was the total change or the total increase, and what was driving that change most significantly. As I scroll down a bit, you'll notice that there is some content here that is in bold font. So the tool is trying to identify the most significant trends that might be occurring in the data, and then we have the ability to apply conditional formatting to that text to make those insights pop a little bit more for the end users. So in this example, it says, of note, core rose over 4 consecutive periods from July to November. However, by December, it had reverted significantly to 9.3 million. As I scroll down below that summary section, you'll notice that we are also drilling one level deeper, and we are also doing analysis at the independent dimension level. So in this case, we are calling out the top. In this case, there's only 3 divisions, so we're calling out the 3 independent divisions, and we're doing similar analysis for each of those independently. I should also mention that this content is fully dynamic with your dashboard. So as you are interacting with your visualization or applying a filter or something like that, this content is going to update in real time. So for example, if I decided that maybe I'm only interested in the first couple of months of my time series, I can go ahead and apply that filter to my data, and you'll notice that in real time my story is updating and focusing on the selection that I made. So once again, this content that you see here, this is totally out of the box. We have not made any changes to the story, but there are a number of ways for us to further enhance the content and customize it a bit for our audience. So the first thing that I'll show, if I click on my formatting options here on the right-hand side and open up the narrative section. The third item that you'll see here is this notion of verbosity. This is a setting that will allow you to control the depth of the analysis. So for certain audiences, you may want to only show the most high-level insights and remove some of the more granular analytics from the story. I can decrease my level of verbosity to low, and you'll notice that my story is now a bit shorter, as opposed to an audience where you do want to show more granular analysis, more analytics in the content. If I increase my verbosity setting to high, you'll notice that my story has expanded quite a bit, and we've added a number of bullets. Beyond these settings that you see on the right-hand side, as I hover over my story, you'll see that I have the ability to click on this gear icon. The gear icon is going to open up my settings window, where there are a number of tabs that allow you to configure various portions of the story. I'm just going to quickly run through each one of these at a high level to give you a sense of the type of things you can do. So the first tab, language, you'll notice that you have the ability to control the number of drill down sections. In our example, there's only 3 divisions, so we are calling out all 3. But you can increase this if you had a dimension value with more values. You could show the top 5, the top 10, or maybe even just the top 1 as a separate drill down section. I also have the ability to adjust my naming conventions. So generically, any period of time will simply be referred to as a period, but I can come in here and adjust this to be represented as months. And of course, my entities in this case would be divisions. You are able to add variability here. So if you want to cycle through a couple different ways of referencing something, you can build that variability into the tool. And then characterizations, this will basically just allow you to format your measures. So in this case, revenue, of course, is a dollar figure. So I want these values to be considered as money. I can also add a level of sentiment for that value. So are increasing values considered to be a good thing or a bad thing? We can assume that revenue going up in most cases would be considered a positive thing. But if you're looking at expenses or adverse events or something like that, you can indicate that large values are considered bad, and that will really just dictate how the tool talks about positive or negative trends over time. And then the next 2 tabs are more specific to the underlying analysis that's taking place. So relationships will allow you to basically inform the tool that there is an existing relationship between the measures you've chosen. In this example, we're looking at revenue. If you had a revenue target or a revenue plan that you want to compare against, you could do things like create an actual versus benchmark relationship between those 2 measure values. And that's going to transform the story to focus more on the relative performance between the 2. The same thing could apply with period over period analysis. So if you have revenues for this year and revenues for last year, and you want to compare them across the 12 months, you could create that relationship, and then the story will focus more on the variance between those 2 periods. And then finally, analytics. So based on the story type you have selected, in this case, again, we are showing a continuous story type. There's certain analytics that will be included in that content. You do have the ability to turn these things on or off, as well as reorder them in terms of prioritization of where they fall in the story. And then the last thing here under display, so I referenced the bold font that you notice in the content. We do have the ability to adjust that. If you recall, under characterizations, we indicated that revenue going up would be considered a positive thing. Maybe we want to call out those positive changes in not only bold font, but also the color green. I can just click on this drop down and select the color green relative to negative changes in bold font and the color red. So I'll just save or close out of my settings window, and you'll notice that the story is now referencing the appropriate naming conventions, currency values. We've adjusted some of the conditional formatting, and of course we have increased our verbosity setting to the highest level. One last thing that I'll show here. So with the high verbosity setting, you notice that there is quite a bit of content here. This is quite a long story. In most cases, we tend to hear that the high verbosity story does include a lot of really meaningful insights, but you may want to just cut down a bit on the amount of content that's being generated. Perhaps you want to include a story on your dashboard that is only focusing on maybe the top 3 or 4 bullets. You do have the ability to control that. So if I click on more options in the upper right-hand corner and go to edit, you will notice that this is now going to take me to a screen where I can actually remove or reorder individual bullets or entire sections of content. So if I want to shorten my story up, maybe I can just remove my drill down sections, and perhaps there are a few bullets here that I do not believe are meaningful for my audience. I can turn these things off and really cut down on the amount of content we're generating. We do have a new feature that we've just added to the extension, which we're really excited about. Obviously, all the content that you see here is auto-generated by Quill, but we have created the ability to create your own insights using your own language. So if I click Add Custom Story Item, you'll notice that a window pops up where I can begin typing whatever insight I may want to communicate. And I also have the ability to include dynamic data functions. So if I want to reference the underlying data, I can simply click that function button and choose one of the many functions that are available, and then apply that to the measure that I want to call out, and simply click Add Function. And this is now going to add a dynamic piece to that custom statement. Our support site does include a lot of information on the various functions that are available here, as well as the analytics that you have access to. Really, I would think about the custom insight in one of 2 ways. You can either recreate an existing auto-generated bullet using your own language, or you can create an insight that is totally new and not captured by the auto-generated text. Perhaps there's something kind of specific to your use case that you'd like to call out for your audience. The custom story item is really going to come in handy for situations like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just save these changes that I made and go back to my report. And you will notice that all of the settings I applied are going to remain in place, but we have a significantly shorter story on our dashboard. I should mention that all of this setup that I just kind of walked through, this is all owned by the builder or the developer of the dashboard. As an end user or consumer, there's no setup required. You would simply see this content embedded on your dashboard in the same way that you see any other visualization. So as far as a demo, I know that was quite a bit of information, but that's really all I wanted to cover today. I mentioned that there is a support site. We're happy to send out the link for you to find more information on Quill's functionality. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And Keelan, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Actually, there was one in the chat that I think it would be good for you to answer verbally. So the question was, can the extension inspect the entire data set, not just the measures and dimensions and the visual?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in this example, I did transform this particular viz, which is why those are the data points that are used in my story. You're not limited to that by any means. You do have the ability, as you can see on the right-hand side here, to simply adjust the dimensions and measures you want to include. So you can add stuff from your available fields to create a more robust output and reference data metrics that might be in a completely separate visualization on your dashboard. So you are able to create, essentially one comprehensive story that references multiple data points across your dashboard.
And there was a question, is this visual available for GCC? So to be totally honest, I had to Google what that was. Maybe I'll answer that briefly by just answering how we deploy the technology. So there's a couple options. One is you can use our public cloud to deploy, and we'll be giving you guys a link to download a free trial. So that actually just calls our multi-tenant API. The other is that you can actually install this on premise or in a private cloud. So if you want to install the extension in your own instance of Azure, or even if you want to put it on bare metal, we can actually give it to you to deploy that way. Oh, and I see a question. So if exporting to PowerPoint, can you edit the text from there? No, unfortunately, right now, I believe, well, actually, I should add a caveat, no, but yes. You actually can't download into PowerPoint external extensions that have to call outside of Microsoft. So that as a partner, unfortunately, that would be us. That being said, there is a copy and paste feature in the extension. Manon, I think you might have highlighted that, but it's the little pencil icon there that he's on right now. So you can copy and paste the content, and then you could put it in PowerPoint and edit it there. And then there's a question, can this be geared to earned value management metrics, such as schedule variance, cost variance, et cetera? I'm not familiar with that particular framework, but I guess I'll say yes in the sense that you can configure the story and the analytics on that feature that Manon just showed to create your own custom insight. A lot of our customers and partners that have very specific use cases or frameworks that they use to analyze their data use that feature to build their own custom insights. So out of the box, you might not get that type of analysis, but you could use that feature to basically build your own insights and pull in those metrics. And there was one more here. There were 4 options in type drop down. Is that configurable? More coming. So Manon, please jump in here. You're more knowledgeable than I am. So the 4 options that we have in the type dropdown when you're just starting to configure the extension are pretty comprehensive of any type of charts or data that you would encounter in Power BI or frankly in any sort of visualization tool or BI tool that we've worked with. It covers quite a bit just in terms of the different kind of categories of the type of data you're analyzing. So keep in mind when you're making that selection, you're not saying, I want a bar chart story or I want a line chart story. It's a bit more general. So I want to talk about continuous data or discrete data or a different type of data. So that actually does cover, I believe, most types of visualizations. Manon, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good description of it. Each of these are just specific story types, and there's certain analytics that come with those story types. So it doesn't really matter what the visualization type necessarily is. It's not as if the tool will only work with bar charts or pie charts or something like that. It really just sort of more so depends on how you intend to analyze the underlying data.
Great. Any other questions we can answer? All right. Well, I'll give a couple of final pieces of next steps here. So one, I'm putting in the Slack right now a URL where you all can download a free trial of the extension. So that'll give you access to Quill for Power BI for 30 days. So I would definitely encourage you to take it for a spin, see for yourself if it works for your use cases. And at that link, you'll also find access to our training sites, support collateral, all that good stuff. Oh, sorry, real quick. Somebody asked how it's licensed. So we licensed it as a site license. So if you have specific questions on the different tiers of site licenses, you can email me. I'll actually drop my email in the Slack here, but we don't license it on a per user basis for Power BI simply just because that's not really the way that Power BI is priced. So the site license price is going to depend on the size of your organization. And there's a couple different tiers, so happy to kind of take that offline. So please, we definitely encourage you guys to give it a try. Couple other things, and I'll drop my email in there as well. If you do have questions, feel free to follow up with myself or Manon. And I would also say we have a site on our website that is Power BI dashboards around COVID-19 data. So if you're like the rest of the world, been closely tracking that, it's a great resource. They're all in Power BI public, but we've kind of consolidated them with our extension. So just another interesting source of information that kind of, I think, really highlights the difference between, we've all seen so many COVID dashboards at this point, the difference between a dashboard without a story and one with a story. So would encourage you guys to all visit us. We're at nerdofscience.com. My address, I'll put it in here in a minute, is keelan@nerdofscience.com. So happy to answer any questions. Or hop on the phone or offline here to get into a little bit more detail. But that's our presentation for today. Thank you guys so much for having us. It's a pleasure to do these user groups. I wish we were there in person, but you know, the team's experience is pretty good, all things considered. So it was a pleasure to join you guys today.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. The responsiveness on my computer is so slow. I think it's this ridiculous camera. But thank you guys so much. I think that was really informative, really interesting to see. I love the amount of interaction. I would request, if you guys want to take yourself off mute and ask any other questions or just chat, please do so. This is still us. We're still laid back and this is not formal.
Hello.
Hey there.
What's going on?
Not a whole lot.
Oh, well, for those who don't know me, my name is Alex Powers, just on the Microsoft side. Alex Powers platform over on Twitter, used to be Powers BI, but I have a question. What was everybody excited to see at Ambassador Build?
We had a tiny little talk about this at the beginning,
Oh,
so
I
I've
missed
already
it.
shared my opinions.
What was yours? What was the quick rundown?
Well, in order, I customized visuals for
Yep.
end users, composite model,
Oh,
and
everyone.
then DevOps.
The Teams integration. Did everyone see that?
Yeah, yep.
That one is incredible.
Teams is going to be amazing. I think the
Yeah.
more integration with Teams, the whole Power Platform especially, is what excites me.
Yep.
I direct query to CDS also.
Yeah, that's mind blowing, but that's going to be available. What was another one? I'm trying to look. Power Automate Visual coming to the canvas. That's going to be wild. Still trying to wrap my head around that. Passing filter context through to workflows. Like, all right, I've got a lot more wheels turning now.
Yeah. It's going to make a lot of the things that we did in the past where we did like kind of hacky solutions to actually be like native and so much easier. Like life is going to be less hard, which I'm super excited about.
Has anyone started digging through the deployment pipelines yet?
We just saw
Or
it
have
today.
they hit?
It's available in our tenant.
You got it today?
Yeah, I saw it because I think the update went in over the weekend. It was deployed to our space. Unfortunately, our admins took away everyone's ability to provision capacity. So I guess on the back end, it's creating 3 new workspace, right, for every deployment, right? And capacity pretty much been taken away, so I have to go talk to them tomorrow to see if I get it back so I can test it out. But it's going to make our life much easier to deploy things. Now we're kind of shoestring like SharePoint and everything to work, the flows together to deploy something, and there are always issues with someone putting in the wrong PBX file and mess up everything. But this will save our all time.
My word of caution: read through the limitations.
Okay, sounds good.
So, I was starting to read it today, and I was like,
What are they?
what are they? No incremental refresh. Some of the data sources not supported. You got to really read through it. Like I'm going through like the stages right now, where it was like excitement, grief, and then like acceptance. It's like I'm saying to myself, all right, it's public preview. It's still like 2 days into it, but very cool for at least what is hit right now.
That's what I learned over the past year. The feature is great in terms of if you look at what it's supposed to do, but it'll take a year for it to get to actually what it says it's going to do.
Yeah.
So I think I'm expected to have the same roller coaster.
Any others?
Turn
Have
on
all
their
of the
video.
releases been like I completely missed it today. I was just so busy. Where can I find all of the details on what was released today?
Oh, I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
I've only
Really
read
happening.
I guess I'm excited about everything. I don't know what everything is.
Yeah, I have a question, see if folks be interested for upcoming or whether it's a little too specialized, but back in January, February, Microsoft released a connector to FHIR, which is the FHIR. It's really the emerging healthcare interoperability standard. I was actually going to demonstrate with Microsoft down at the big HIMSS conference that got canceled in March, but still have that demo and could probably lure in the program manager for FHIR if there's enough, healthcare interest. It's kind of a big deal for healthcare, but anyway, there's a Power BI connector for FHIR databases. I'd be happy to do a demo. Don't even throw it out there if there's enough general interest healthcare wise.
I'm interested.
Shannon, you're always interested.
Okay.
I am too.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Sounds interesting.
And if you're looking for places to speak, there's other user groups meeting all over the world now. So
Yeah. Well, maybe if it's healthcare specific, we could, publicize it out and get some beyond DC interest to come. And I'll see if I can get Michael Hansen, the program manager for it, to come as well.
Why don't we do a healthcare themed meeting in July?
Sounds good.
Boom, it's on.
Okay.
I'll shoot you an email.
All right. I'll help you plan it.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else got anything to talk about? I am multitasking, but poorly. Just one quick thing for folks who jumped on a little bit later. We are a part of a global network of user groups that are associated with the whole Power Platform. So if you're interested and you want to join us or any of the other user groups, we have a unified community website that Jamie posted in the chat earlier. You may need to scroll up quite a bit, but I'll find it and post it again, or Jamie's probably already doing it as we speak because he's 10 steps ahead of me at all times. But so you guys are always welcome to join us. Once we start meeting again in person, I love the in-person meetings. They're amazing. I feel like it's just such a good opportunity to network with people. And because we're in the DC area, we have such a distinct vantage point. When we originally started this group, we were interested in bringing together folks from the nonprofit side and the for-profit private industry, and then also government, and getting all of those people in a room together so we can kind of cross-pollinate because they're so siloed typically. So I think we have that really unique advantage being here in DC. And now that we've got people from all over the world, welcome. Your thoughts are definitely valuable here. So thanks for joining us. All right, well, with that, it is almost 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we can go ahead and wrap up. Looks like the Portland user group is meeting tomorrow night, and they're actually a really active user group right now. I've seen lots of buzz about them on the Twitter, so check them out, see what they're up to, and maybe we'll see you there. Ooh, Ben is interested in developing a Power App. So I'm thinking, Ben, if you want to stay on the line and anybody else is interested in talking Ben through a Power App, let's stay on the line and chat about it. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Rocio, Z?
Nope.
Nope, no right now.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers for taking the time out to show us your Power BI wizardry and help us understand a little bit the storytelling aspect and making sure that we're really building insights that people are going to take action on rather than just presenting a bunch of data to people. That's obviously why we're all here. So thanks for reminding us of that. And thanks for everybody who joined, especially our first timers. It's really nice to see new faces, and for all of our, not old faces because none of us are old, but for all of our returning faces, it's good to see you guys too. We are meeting again in June on the 16th? Question mark? Again, my multitasking poorly is showing. Yeah, we're meeting again on June 16th, same time, same place. So everybody is, of course, welcome. And then our July meeting will be the healthcare focused meeting. So we'll start advertising it as that. If anyone else is interested in speaking, hit us up. You can email any of us. You can drop a note in the meetup, and we would love to have you.